The other interesting thing, real quick, is when the UFO hunters were at my yard filming, and everybody knew that they were going to be there, 2 military helicopters flew over in formation real slow right over my yard.
Hey, Frank Costigan and Houseboat Bob, thanks for joining us. It was a fascinating discussion, and we'll have you back on again sometime. And coming up in a couple of minutes, Richard Dolan. Stay with us on Coast to Coast AM. My guest now, I've got about 800 UFO books, I think, in my collection, and if I were to choose 10 essential books that I was going to take with me to a desert isle somewhere, he wrote one of them, and it's called UFOs in the National Security State. It was written back in 2000, and it was an instant classic. UFO researcher, historian Richard Dolan got an M.A. from the University of Rochester, a B.A. from Alfred University. He studied at Oxford. He's done a lot of work on national security issues, and that sort of led him into UFOs. And in 2000, he published this 500-page book that I just mentioned, UFOs in the National Security State. Past couple of years, he's been working on a follow-up. Not quite there yet, but, man, it's a tremendous undertaking. And I got to run into him here in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago. We got into all sorts of stuff. Richard, I can't tell you how great it is to have you back on the show.
It is my pleasure to be on Coast, and it's a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks for having me on.
Let's start with sort of the question of the moment in UFO circles. All the talk about disclosure and whether or not President-elect Obama will be briefed, whether or not, if he were briefed, he would release the information to the public. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic. When watching Barack Obama all through his campaign for the last really years, since he's been a major public figure, he expressed zero interest publicly in the topic of UFOs. This matter was broached to him more than one time. You remember back when the Democratic primary field was more wide open, Dennis Kucinich, at that time a candidate, was outed, as it were, by his very close friend Shirley MacLaine, remember, for his interest in UFOs and his sighting of a UFO.
And took nothing but grief for it.
Oh, boy, did he. And so from that point really onward, the UFO issue has been buzzing in the background. Hillary Clinton had UFO connections mentioned many times in relationship with her during the Bill Clinton presidency and the Lawrence Rockefeller Initiative. She avoided the issue, although it was always there. The media continually touched on this issue, due in no small part to that of other UFO researchers and activists who kept bringing the matter up. But Obama continued to dodge it, to avoid it, and he's continued to do so publicly and very, very astutely. I mean, when it's been brought up to him, he just, cleverly, with some humor, sometimes will move right around it. However, there's a couple of key things now. As many people I think now realize, the head of his transition team to the White House is none other than John Podesta.
Yeah.
And, this turned a lot of heads because John Podesta was not only the former White House chief of staff under Bill Clinton, okay, but John Podesta does have a demonstrably strong interest in the UFO phenomenon. And not only a strong interest, John Podesta went public in 2002 with a statement at the National Press Club regarding the need to end UFO secrecy. And so, and in fact, I remember very clearly what he said in talking about that it was time for the government to declassify these records, and he was specifically talking about UFO records that were more than 25 years old, so that science could then have the tools necessary that would allow them to determine what is actually going on.
Let's take this a piece at a time. Do you think Podesta knows more than the average Joe?
Yes, I do. I do believe that he knows it. I can't say that I'm certain, but all signs point to yes. In the media, Podesta is always portrayed as a guy who's an X-Files fanatic. And this is back during the 90s when the X-Files was running, and that was his show, apparently. But also with a very genuinely strong interest in UFOs. Now, whether he's gotten actual knowledge being briefed, I can't tell you. I don't know if anybody of us really knows for sure. But what one does find in this field You walk around enough, you talk to enough people, you find within the government circles, high enough levels, this goes from military and intelligence, people very quietly know things. And for a man to go public, as John Podesta did in 2002, who's a man who lives in Washington as a complete political animal, you don't just do that on a whim. So my feeling is he probably knows something very important. The other thing that makes me wonder about Barack Obama and whether or not he may go public is his relationship to another powerful political figure, and this is former National Security Advisor under Jimmy Carter, Zbigniew Brzezinski. This is less discussed, but I think it could be significant. Now, Brzezinski wasn't simply Jimmy Carter's National Security Advisor. I think maybe more importantly, Zbigniew Brzezinski is a close friend of David Rockefeller.
Oh.
And about 35 years ago, with David Rockefeller, co-founded the Trilateral Commission. And if you want to search around for an elite, one of the top elite individuals who is one of the go-to guys regarding global geopolitical issues, well, Zbigniew Brzezinski would be one such person. And it just says to me that Barack Obama is not just some outsider, as he's often seen. I mean, he's a relative newcomer to the political scene, but he has very significant inside connections. And so when you get someone like Brzezinski supporting you, and in fact, Brzezinski supported Obama back in September, I think, of 2007. So for a long time, he's had powerful support. I believe that the issue of UFO disclosure could very well be coming to a head in the next, let's say, 5 years. Now, when I hear some of my colleagues talk who are promoting disclosure, I seem like, 5 years, my gosh, Rich, it's going to happen any month now. Where are you going? But
we wish.
I think that 5 years is possibly optimistic. I'm not seeing it happen right away. It would be great from a truth point of view for President-elect Obama or the new President Obama to make a statement in the spring. But here's the deal, George. You come out with disclosure, and there are many, many problems that any president is going to have to deal with regarding disclosure. It's not just going to be this simple thing where, you admit suddenly that the truth has come out and everything is all fine. Here's what a president is going to have to deal with. He's going to have to, after saying, yes, it's come to my attention that extraterrestrials are here and at least some of these UFOs are from non-human intelligences, he's going to have to deal with the fact that for many, many years our military has had some kind of confrontational relationship with these objects, and not just our military, but it certainly appears all of the global militaries. He's then going to have to deal with a structure of secrecy that is developed around this topic that can only be called illegal and extra-constitutional. We can certainly delve into this, if you will.
Oh, and yeah, we will.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'm going to take a break. I need to take a break here. We'll continue with this thought. Also, I'd like to sort of pick your brain when we come back about whether you think, and I know it's just speculation, whether you think Obama has already been briefed or not.
Sure.
Stay with us with more of Rich Dolan on Coast to Coast AM. Welcome back to Coast. My guest, Richard Dolan, author of UFOs and the National Security State, and soon to be the author of the follow-up to that book, whenever you get around to it. I know you're working hard on that, and we'll talk about that.
It's just about done.
Oh, excellent. Good.
It's actually, I just gave a lecture on the next book at the recent Crash Retrieval Conference where you and I were meeting. It's a follow-up to the first history that I wrote. The first book was my Mondo attempt at a history covering the early Cold War years from the early 40s up to 1973. The second book is the second part of a three-part historical work, and it covers really the key years of the last 2 decades of the Cold War, from 1973 up to 1991, the end of the Soviet Union. And it's the same length as the first book, only somewhat fewer years, so it's a little more in-depth, Covering the whole gamut, George. It's military encounters of UFOs galore, nearly 200